So during the Serbian movement phase, we pull away a little bit, not doing any recuperation. Over here you can see we formed a line. We're trying to hold on to Sabak still. Unfortunately, we're trying to hold it with this Moravian second, which has a CER loss. My hope is that I can, gain a couple of victory points by not giving that up for a little while. But things could get ugly still, But you can see I've created a much more solid line, if not one constructed of such strong points that are hard to actually knock out of place. And also an extension down here. Moving some of the newly activated units into place. I don't know what this is. This is Garrison of Obrevnikov, which probably is, yeah, it is actually right there. Do I think those 2 hex units are really all that useful? I've left that one in place and haven't done anything like it over here, which I could certainly have done. The thing is, there isn't that much on the Serbian side. There's this one division here, which is a little weakened and can't really be afforded to launch in that direction. So it's hard to grasp what the implications, at least for me, are of moving in the way that I am, and why is this in 2 hex mode and not in 1 hex mode? I'm not entirely sure. I think I'd be perfectly fine in 1 hex mode, to tell you the truth, and probably safer. Just because forcing your way across the river doesn't look that wise. And it's easier for me to think in 1 hex mode. What else? So there is some risk to this, which is that, this unit is less combat effective. It's got more of a chance of degrading further. Another factor is I can't really pull my units off the line. That's the real harm here. Let me make sure that Dunov and Beograd, those are here. Now, I'm in supply right now, but I did not move this. Maybe I should. And that'll keep that in supply a little bit longer. But when it comes down to it, really, this first army, or first corps, is not terribly useful to me where it is right now. But I can't afford to split things up, so shifting it over isn't really harmful. But yeah, on the other hand, I'm getting victory points for each of those. The problem is I'm leaving things on the line that are in bad shape. The attacker, if they start to fail, aren't really in a position where they have to leave things online. Now, one question I might have is I may have thrown something in here that could have done a prepared assault. The problem is, if I do a prepared attack, I'm telegraphing, and the Austrians defend that space perhaps, and maybe get much better out of it than if I just wait and do it, declare the attack during the attack phase. So I guess it's okay that I didn't do it, because I'm not sure I had the movement points to perform it. We had an out of supply situation here and here, and both of these lost a CER due to that. And I guess we're on counter movement. The Austrians don't do a whole lot. I've got a potential attack here that's not terrible odds. I'm looking at 15. Can't tell what color that is. Is that tan or is that gray? That's tan, so that would be 16. Whereas here I have 21. Yeah, that's not too good. I thought it might be better than that. Yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of potential for advancement on either side, but we'll see what happens, whether the Serbs launch an attack there or otherwise. Largely, we're filling in the gap here and sliding our way up, trying to connect up with 5th Corps or 5th Army. Grabbing this is important. It's worth a bunch of victory points. And then we can kind of slide away, maybe leaving a core back here, but maybe we don't really have to leave that much in danger of a Serbian attack. And one thing to look at for this is whether the Serbs get any victory points. I mean, they get victory points if they get to here, which triggers this unit to help defend it, or obviously Sarajevo, but I don't think there's anything closer than that. Serbian National, Sarajevo, Kalinikov, Visegrad, 1622. That's here. Well, that's worth points. That's worth 5. Just being adjacent to Sarajevo or Kalinikov is problematic. So I can't just ignore this front. I probably have to leave a lower strength corps there and move a corps up here and shift the 5th over to cover. I'm not sure. We'll see. This is a time when maybe the attacker should have gone all out. We ended up getting a retreat result that would have counted if they had gone all out. But they would have taken a step loss for it. Or a CR, I don't remember which. Big difference, actually. Had a hit here, ended up causing a single CER loss to the Austrians. And now the Austrians can counterattack against this town again. And, I've got fair numbers against it. But the idea was, let's make them hold out, or let's try to hold out as long as possible, not just hand it to them. So I'm not sure that I really wanted to establish this line at all costs, basically. In the same place, which is, I really got to get this 4th Corps over into the 5th Army, which is I launched a counterattack with that. I'm not sure why it's not part of the 5th Army. There's no reason for it not to be. There's room for it, and whatever. It's just trying to manage these is beyond my reasonable capability. Anyway, we launched an attack which is going to cause problems. We didn't hurt the Serbs at all, but we got a horrible roll for the first of our rolls. Now we're at, God, I don't know, -1, I think. So that's 10 on the 31. 10 on the 31 means he takes another CE. So he paid the price. The only thing the Serbs paid was off here, but it wasn't a bad attack. So, I mean, I shouldn't have done it. And the Serbs would have retreated again if I had intensified the combat, but I don't know what I'm doing. Letting the mistake stand, but I'm gonna move the damn thing now because there's no reason not to. Is there? 14th and Lugendorf. I can make them loose. Let me just do it while I can remember. Where's the 14th? God knows. I bet it's down here. Yeah, 14th and Lugendorf I'll put up here with the AGSB. And keep the core over here because it's actually kind of committed to the fighting. Although that does leave this as part of the 5th Army now. So technically, this has moved to here. That'll be at the beginning of the Austrian player turn, but again, if I don't do it now, I will not remember. And I could have done it before, so it's not that terrible that I fucked up, especially since the Austrians are the ones who paid the price for it. But that's a clear sign that I need to take a break. I think I'm an idiot anyway. 4th Corps could not have joined in with 8th Corps there. Again, I'm not going to go back and try to fix it. It hurt the Austrians more than it hurt the Serbs anyway. But yeah, I should not have been able to make that attack. You really have to get your corps set up to make the entirety of the attack. You can't count on being able to flexibly move things, unless you happen to have loose units attached to the corps, in which case, hey, it all works fine. You know, you just shift them back and forth. I can talk a little bit about the south. I've started moving the 6th, or I finished moving the 6th Army. We got some reinforcements that have come on up here, etc., but shifting further and further up towards the 5th. 15th Corps, I'm planning on shifting it up this way. 16th Corps, I don't know, I'd love to take this, but I took the victory point hex. That'll be worth, what, like 5 victory points? And, you know, good enough, man. Beyond that, I do have to retain something back here to defend Visegrad even. So I can't give up too much space. I've got to keep some pressure on this southern flank. But I also have to stretch up, and that's going to just keep putting the aggressive intention on that 5th Army, which, I don't know, it feels like I don't have enough there. And we're setting ourselves up to launch again against this weak force. Try to push our way through. The Serbs don't really have an opportunity, as far as I can tell, to disrupt this prepared attack. There's only one prepared attack marker on there. So, I don't know, you know, what the chances of anything are, but you know, this corps, this 4th Corps, can kind of swerve around and take a position if I can just push the Serbs down a little bit more. Oh, I haven't dealt with these guys yet. Let me see if there's any opportunity for them. They might want to shift their attack focus. I'm gonna drop. Oh, this probably can't work. It's probably only like 2 1/4 or something. Shit. Stacking in this. I can stack that many units, but I can't use them all in battle, so they're not really useful. So it's 3.5 divisions can occupy the hex, but no more than 2 1/4 can attack. Which is problematic because it could get in here though. But that wouldn't be a prepared attack then. So I can move into these hexes with 9s, but I can't. Oh, and is that into any hex? Shit. Oh, shit. I may have been misplaying this game entirely. Can attack from or defend into any hex. Yeah. Okay, so that's fine. I'm allowed to attack from multiple angles with more forces, as you would expect. However, in the mountains, into or out of a mountain terrain hex. That's a little differently worded than attack from or defend in. You see? So those mountain hexes are really, really hard. They're where the real difficulty lies. But I couldn't move in here without a forced march, because this would be 4, 8, no, 4, 10 right away. And I'm not going to get a prepared attack if I move from here to here. Now what if I move to here? So this would cost me 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I still wouldn't have enough movement points to do the prepared attack. Jeez. Let's consider what we're facing here. We know the units, so it's like 16. We have 25, and 9 is 34. More or less. There might be strength reductions, you know. That's what we don't know, but that's approximately what we're looking at, because we are able to be told what the units are that are there, if I recall correctly. I don't know. I mean, that's how I've been playing it. Limited intelligence. You cannot examine the contents except the top unit. You also know the ID, unit type, and size of any other units in the hex. Well, so you need a counter manifest to be able to assess things, and why can't you just look? Again, there might be strength point reductions, but geez, man. Oh, fuck. All right. Another thing I could do, though, is this. This will work. 3 plus 6 is 10. Let's put my bigger unit in there. 3 plus 6 is 10. I'm in there. I'll drop the... Oh, but these guys both have to make force marches. Force marches at 1. We'll do it. We'll do it. So they're working on their CER at +1. Their CERs for the 42nd, 30s. Ooh, this one's only a 9. Okay, we'll go for the 36. That's a 10. I got +1 on it, though. Just barely make it. And then the other one, which is a 9, and I'm screwed. 9... Okay, +1 is 12, so I'm 3 off. That gets me a failed EC of 1. So this guy, shit. This guy goes down to a -2. Okay. But there's no reason for me to force march these guys, except to strengthen my defenses there. This could get repulsed, but we'll do a prepared attack there with one of the units that has not moved yet, and that'll fix my situation. And now, as I keep knocking the Montenegrins off, this table's too thin. We will go to the counter movement phase where I wanted to, so I can brew some more tea. Just caught something as I'm rolling the combat against here. Again, still low intensity. The 2 retreat result actually causes a strength reduction as well. I think I had at least one of them against the Serbs. Alas, you know. But yeah, we're gonna take a hit there. What I was about to do was look up whether or not the retreat path is protected, i.e. do I take an extra CER loss for running through an enemy zone? I don't think I do, but I need to check that. The Austrians end up actually fairly successful. Well, entirely successful. They pushed into both the hexes they went for. They've got a pretty decent line. And I'm going to have to look at the cav withdrawal rules, because if I can get out of there without paying a movement point penalty, that might actually be a bonus. I'm gonna need to move my line around a little bit, and that flexibility is necessary at this point. I don't think I have any counterattacks to make. This one here I could make. I got 14 strength points to 6 plus whatever kind of mountain that is. I don't know what kind of mountain that is. That is foothills, I think. So that's +2, so 8. So I'm looking at 14 to 8. It's not great odds. It's not a prepared attack. The only thing I have going for me is the higher capability, and I don't see too much advantage to pushing there. Yes, I might be able to, risk my core in terms of trying to knock his supply back and maybe screw things up, but I'd probably end up in much worse shape. So I just don't see any big gain from launching the attack. And there's units that are shifted as though I had moved them that I know I didn't move, so they've been like that for a while. Moving into the next turn, put the dice up there to tell me it's the Serbs. Started building another pontoon bridge. The Cav could indeed withdraw without paying zone of control. Reaction and withdrawal don't require that. That's awesome. It makes Cav a lot more interesting. I haven't really been paying too much attention to their capabilities. But reaction, I believe, is basically reaction away. So it's not like you get you get to run away, but you don't really get to interfere. If I have this right, I don't fucking know now. 8.3 is the retire rule. It's in the same general area. Cavalry action movement. It's triggered with an enemy unit moving adjacent to it or from one adjacent hex to another. It doesn't say that you could actually use it offensively, I think, but in general it's a get out of dodge cheap card. And here I definitely want to do that because I do want the flexibility to move that piece. What else happened? Well, we have Sabak. That's worth a victory point every Austrian turn. This is an Austrian turn. And we just took this. I don't have a great way to mark this. I could just write it down on a sheet of paper. But yeah, that's another 5. So we're up to 7 victory points total. We got another pontoon bridge being built, as I said. The reason for that is the rail line runs down there. Hey, I don't know if I'm going to want 3 pontoon bridges all on that area, especially since it takes 2 to cross the Danube in the few places I can, which is where there's islands in the way. But for now, it's perfectly fine, and they can be picked up and removed. So, I think that's it. And I think that's it for tonight. I feel like I have to turn as I move into the Serbian turn of game turn 5, I have to turn the sequence of play on its head. I can't assign units to their command until I know where they can move to. It doesn't make sense for me to just kind of arbitrarily say, basically what I'd have to do is prefigure my entire move and mark it somehow, when the reality is I'm doing a withdrawal, falling back into position, and it only makes sense to be able to allocate the core after I figure out that move. Now, this is not what would happen in a command center. The command center, they would plot everything out, figure out where the units are going to move, give them their orders and their orders to be new commanders, and then the units actually move. But it doesn't make sense to do that when the game is basically the planning stage for the most part, except for rolling dice for combat and whatnot. So everything that I'm doing on the game in terms of where can I get to and stuff like that, that is the planning part of the game. Are there places where you can get into trouble with this? Yeah. Where there's reaction capabilities, they could interfere. Where you make mistakes, that could be an issue too. But, so much of the game is like, are mistakes a good thing or a bad thing? That's actually something I've been questioning. So like when you make rules mistakes, you have to kind of hand wave those away and say, well, something happened that shouldn't have been able to happen, but games don't always account for everything that can happen in the real world properly. So like, okay, those units marched too fast. Those units came to the support of a core when they shouldn't have been able to, whatever. Shit like that does happen. And games often have to have special rules to deal with that kind of thing. So you just kind of say, yeah, it's good enough. But other kind of mistakes, the tactical mistakes, strategic mistakes, whatever, where oh shit, I totally allocated my forces, whatever. Lost track of that, and these guys get cut off. That's not violating the rules of the game, which supposedly are supposed to cover all of what nature covers, but rather they're violating good practices in the battlefield. And the general you're representing making any given decision is incompetent. And, that's perfectly reasonable, but it can be very frustrating as well. Anyway, I don't think it's going to hurt too much to turn this on its head, so that's what I'm doing. Down here, moved back, started some recovery, recovered a unit strength point there, or a CER level there. Here I'm trying to find a place to safely recover most of my army, but one of the problems is some of the units are pretty badly beaten. Most of them are a little tired, and then there's a couple fresh units. And I gotta keep, it looks like, the little tired ones on the line a little bit longer. Of course, checking between here and there to figure out what's what and, what's as tired as it can be, etc., is hard to do. The strength reductions I have right on the map, but again, the CERs are over here. I really don't know about the core organization. It's one of the clever things that I see in the game in terms of like, oh, you added something new to the overall wargaming catalog by tracking these. And I mean, you do Le Grand Guerre does this too, but in Le Grand Guerre, the assignments are basically by the hacks, so it's not really that big a deal. You're talking, a given formation holds 1 or 2 hexes. Here, you're looking at trying to define areas of command and stuff like that, and it's a pain in the ass. And at the core level, it's really just which units are attached to that core, and it does so little except create annoyances, in my opinion. Although it did prevent one core from operating with another. That is an issue. However, those are units that, the only reason it prevented it is those are core assigned units. And I could totally see core assigned units being handled differently and everything else being handled the same. There is one problem though. One thing that the core delimiters impact is you can only have so many units in a core. So 1, 2, 3.5 divisions. I believe they go up to 5.5 like the Serbian ones do. If not, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So there's a limitation to how many of these loose units you can apply to a core. In actuality, for the Austrians, it's probably not that big a deal. For the Serbs, maybe more of a big deal. Because I'm here with 1, 2, 3, 4 over here. 4 here. This doesn't really count. I mean, that's down here. It would, and since there are no core designations at all on the Serbian side, and everything's loose, it would be possible to make one big core, and that would be much more effective. And there's a reasonable limit to how much force a given core command can actually support. So I'm okay with that. In terms of, I like what the game portrays with that. Is it worth the cost? I don't know. The flexibility is so great that it really doesn't make much difference. The Serbians are on defense. The attacking Austrians have limitations baked in that all this extra fluff maybe makes it harder to actually treat. Like the fact that I'm dealing with these different sections and everything may have made me more easily, and the rules that support them and everything, keeping that all in mind, may have made it easier to actually forget that I couldn't just throw the 4th Corps in with whatever this other one is, the 13th. I don't know. Anyway, back to the mess that I'm dealing with. The line we've pulled back to in the north, with the 2nd Corps covering this, 1st Corps down here, or 3rd Corps down here, and 1st Corps just handling the back end and recovery type stuff. Largely because I've got the Beograd unit, which has to be included in something. It doesn't have to get supply from this. I could stretch the Corps wherever I want it, but I mean the existence of that Corps has to be there, and I don't really want it in the front line. The less Corps I have in the front line, the better it is. More Corps, more problems, right? More Corps, more problem. Anyway, that'll get me to the counter move. We'll see what that means. Right now, it doesn't look like the 5th Army is ready to abandon its goal. It looks like it's making a lot of ground and has the Serbs on the run. Historically, they abandoned their goal to shift to cover Serbien, so that the 5th Army, 6th Army was able to come up. And eventually they did capture this, and they captured Beograd, and then they got forced to fall back. So, you know, we'll see what it all works out as. Not a lot of Serbian reinforcements coming, so I don't know what changes the mood of things. The only withdrawals I see here is right here. That the CER roles make me happy about is this concept of, it's like the friction point games, really. Although you don't just expend friction for movement with forced marches, you kind of might. You end up with this question of, do you want to press your attack with units that are not in great shape, but the enemies may be in worse shape overall? Or do you recover some of your units, which basically means you're not going to make any attacks? I mean, right now I'm looking at, hey, 2 of my divisions here in 8th Corps and 3 of my divisions in 13th need to recover. Now, attacking is harder than defending, so I kind of think I need to. But in doing so, remember the Austrians have to be like 4 hexes away or something in order to recover. It's either 3 or 4. That's I'd have to fall back right now to start recovering, you know, and then both sides will re-prepare, and then we try to figure out another way to attack, and that might hurt things. On the other hand, I've got a bunch of reinforcements coming from the 6th Army that, at least presumably, I don't know, I'm having trouble deciding whether or not how much of the 16th Corps I can disengage. Right now I've got them kind of trying to press and create fighting, but you know, I've been advised that this is a fool's errand, and also, even though I'm making, you know, progress down there, there's a lot of mountainous terrain. And as the lines tighten up, it's going to become harder and harder to take anything. And there's nothing of value here until you get up here, I think. So, of course, there's something of value right here. And if I could break this and push forward a little bit more. Of course, if I could do that, then I'd want to keep putting pressure on this whole thing. And I don't think I can do that. So I think the issue then becomes, how about we try pulling back? Well, we didn't do that this turn. So we're stupid. Yeah. And 13th Corps is in a little worse shape than the 8th. So I'm pushing forward with the 8th. I'm going to try to hit this damaged unit. This actually has a strength loss. Come the interphase, I can recover that, but I can't recover it right now. And I doubt that there's any attacks down here on either side. But yeah, I think this is going to be the only attack. I looked at the Serbs, and they don't want to try to, you know, weaken the attack with a hit against the right flank of the Austrians. That doesn't make a lot of sense. It was 3-1 odds here, artillery bonuses, whatever. The Austrians were unable to move. If they had done an improved attack or whatever, an enhanced attack, they could have pushed the Serbs out of the hex, but they would have done damage to themselves as well. So that may not be a great idea. I am looking at and beginning to enjoy the way the combat system works to a great deal. Let me swap batteries so that I can talk about this, because this one's dead. At first glance, artillery didn't seem to do much, right? Because it's like, oh, so some chance of a little bit of morale reduction, you know, and it just adds to the bonus on the die roll. Well, very little happens in this game in terms of actual casualty type, you know, results. That doesn't mean there's not people dying, but in terms of the impact on the actual units, very little is happening. When you look at the chart, sure, retreat results, artillery don't really help with that unless you get sort of a unit collapse type thing off of the CER reductions, or if you get a ridiculously high value, you get a retreat requirement. But for the most part, the artillery is not going to push you out of the hex, which makes sense. It generally just softened up units and caused casualties, but softening up the units is the bigger thing here, right? So by changing the modifier on the amount of stress that you're putting on the unit, you're increasing the CER effects, which is really what you do in terms of casualties in this game. That is what the casualties are about. It's very, very seldom that you're going to get a strength loss on a unit, and unless you can surround a unit or something like that and force it through zones of control that are not negated, you're probably not going to cause strength losses that way. If you manage to catch an asset off on its own, my first thought was, oh, assets fine, you know, whatever, they're just little units. And they kind of work that way, except they don't take CER losses, which means they dissolve real fast in combat when they're on their own. You do not want assets on their own if you can possibly help it. Anyway, the way the artillery works really does seem to have a nice impact on the attritional nature of this kind of battering the enemy army to try to weaken it a little bit. Now, in this case, you know, my strength and artillery advantage didn't do me enough good because the Serbs just have a higher quality force. That's all there is to it. That they basically have a 4 quality for their frontline units. The Austrians have a 3 quality. That means that the Austrians will always be at a 1-point penalty on the combat table, unless there are weird units involved. And that 1-point penalty on the die roll table, in either direction, if the Serbs are attacking too, is really, really impactful. So, yeah, I really like the way it integrates, and it does a good job of presenting that aspect of it. Again, you know, when I looked at the combat chart, I said, oh, neat, this looks complicated. Is it complicated for a reason? Yeah, it is. And it actually really works well. And one of the things that I'm worried about is that the third edition apparently revises the combat chart and maybe makes it simpler. It's hard to work with. There's no question of that. It's hard to work with, but I think there's a gain off of it. I would have to play around with that third edition, and I'm not gonna print and play rules and sheets and stuff to do it. There are some additional counters too for offensive outrance, but you know, it's just not worth it for me. Most of them appear to be informational counters that would be helpful to playing the game, but that I can fudge things for, from what I could see of them. There may be some additional rules though. And that gets us towards the end here, finishing phase. Do I want to retire my cav? Can't. River step. We build this other pontoon, and we may slowly end up in a position. I want that here. Right? No. Can't be there. It's being built between two hexes. It's got to be these two hexes. How about that? Okay. Nothing there. Kamaji, I gotta decide where they're gonna fall back to. Remember, 5 hex distance between them. And then victory points, there shouldn't be any. Well, starting the Austrian side of turn 5. I may have to pause because I got somebody coming to pick something up. We got some new reinforcements coming on the board, some of which are, and we've had a few before, the March regiments, which are really quite awesome because they can be incorporated outside of the interphase. The regular replacement points only come in during the interphase, I think, and it's creating this kind of clunky problem for the Serbs. Now, much of this is CER reduction, but the Serbs actually have one strength point they have to replace. These March regiments seem so much more potent, but I haven't taken any losses on the Austrians either. The Austrians are doing quite well, I would think, right now. Okay, so the main intent for the Austrians, we have pulled back from these or this kind of attacking position in the south. It's not doing us any good. We're not going to break through. We have to try to hold the line here, and I'm going to use 16th Corps to try to do that as much as possible, while the 15th Corps is being sent up to reinforce 5th Corps, or 5th Army. The 5th Army itself is, well, 13th Corps is largely recovering where I can. I've thrown a couple of units up here to make it hard to disrupt this recovery by getting closer, because some of these units had to move away in order to do so. This is part of 2nd Army's 4th Corps that, like, it's the only thing that's recovering that was in a already recovering situation. I moved my artillery over, my gunboats down, and I'm doing another prepared attack. But the Serbs get a chance to fill in there and try to make that a little harder on me. I can't pull out, but... And I don't know what else to say. We're on counter movement. Unlike many, many, many war games, this one really provides you with advantages for having reserves. Units behind the line that can rush into whatever hex the prepared attack is on. Unfortunately, my Serbs weren't doing that. Had I left this thing close, I could strengthen it. I can't move from here to here without a force march that's kind of devastating. So, you know, I'm just going to take the prepared attack. But this is far from optimal. Basically, you want units that are 1 hex behind the line that can't be put into an enemy zone of control by the attacker. Is pretty much the thing. Whatever the line is. You know, if it's in every other hex line, the enemy can kind of squeeze in there and cause you issues, so then maybe you can't be 1 hex behind the line. But 1 hex behind the line in normal terrain means that you can enter anything below mountainous terrain, basically. Because it's 2 extra movement points to enter an enemy zone of control. So it's just something that I'm not familiar with playing that way, but it's like the geometry of this game is probably solid lines as much as possible, or broken lines. You can leave gaps as long as you've got sort of supporting formation to that line. You have the flanks anchored, right? And I mean, it all makes sense when you think in the terms. Of course, what doesn't make sense is the every other hex formation that is just common to so many war games. it really does make sense that you'd want to have somewhat contiguous lines, and what breaks you have are more limited. But it's not the way one normally plays war games, so it's like hard to learn. Though I can push up a little further, disrupt some of these rebuilding capabilities that the Austrians are doing. And unfortunately, that cost them all of their rebuilding movement points. Had they moved a couple hexes back, been further away, that would have been a harder operation to undertake. In fact, it would have been impossible, pretty much. But instead, I've just disrupted, their capacity to build their forces back up. The only way that could be countered is, I can stay where I am and kind of freeze these and try to push the Serbs back, which the Serbs are not in the best of positions if they've got this line running here. So they may not want to stay like this, and they got to stay like this through their next turn to actually disrupt me. Of course, things just deteriorate for the Moravian unit. I'm kind of used to, I don't know. You get this view, again, from standard war games that don't go into this kind of detail. The unit's just kind of, oh look, you're half strength now. Oh look, you're dead. Here it's this wonderful degradation of capabilities. To begin with, the strength point loss, which was there, they took another strength point loss because of a 2-point retreat. They also took 2 more hits and now are combat ineffective, which gives them a -3 to their CER. That doesn't keep getting worse, so that, their failures don't become automatic eventually. But also, they can't do prepared attacks or repulse. You wouldn't really want to, but maybe, right? It's not that reduced. It's still extra strength points. It might be important to have in a position, but you want to recover the unit. And that's the whole thing. When something starts getting damaged badly, you need to recover it. And that's the problem with this line. Now, I can probably pull back and be just fine with whatever I fall back to. But I'm a little too extended as it stands. And, something like this guy, Timok, he's going to be expending 4 more movement points. And then he's still at -2. You don't really want to just toss him back in the line at that condition. Now, I've sent another division down here, the second Timok actually, down here, which is turning out to be a mistake. I had plenty of units, right? And I didn't have a reserve, and that's where the problem lies. That's going to put me, counterattack. The Serbs are not counterattacking. That's going to put me here, no cav retire, no river stuff, right? Kamachi is not now victory points. So we get the per turn victory points, which at this point we're getting, which is 1 per turn for Sabak. We haven't been knocked out of there, and we move forward, and we're coming up on the 4th Corps having to come out. Now, that leaves a hell of a gap, but I got a couple of units to come in and replace that. Unfortunately, the withdrawal doesn't happen except in your own reinforcements, which is here, rather than in the joint preliminary. Okay. Yippee. Austrian side, I'm losing the 4th Corps here. I could have tried to abuse them harder. And in particular, I got the CER damage to it, and I'm just recovering it and everything. And that's probably not the wisest way to play the game. That's okay. I was aware of this concept, for sure. I've seen it in other games. There's basically no penalty for getting the Second Army components. Not that there's much. The 4th Corps, essentially, destroyed before you send it all. Which, there are other games that are that way. There are other games also that you get a victory point penalty if you don't send stuff off. All right, starting the 6th turn, and no reinforcements for the Serbs. Shouldn't be any activations left. I hope. I gotta figure out what to do with that thing. Which means I guess it's time to actually start playing with the Serbs. And like I said, I combine the attachment, supply, and movement all together. It's just easier. I catch myself doing this. I just noticed I had CER counters under the actual units instead of over where their actual CER value. Just because, man, it would be easier without these suckers, I think. And, you know, make some slight concessions to, you know, maybe some organizational failures wouldn't be as well represented, but at the cost of making the game a little easier to cope with. The one problem with that, of course, is you got your strength you got your strength penalties and your status in terms of how your morale is. But there are other games that have multiple counters on, you know, a single piece to represent multiple different statuses. Like, think about your TSS type system, which has strength counters and, you know, morale state counters and stuff like that. So the Serbs doing recovery where they can. I'm going to launch a prepared assault here. I think a breakthrough here throws some scurrying around on the Serbs, and it keeps me in that, or on the Austrians. I don't know why I keep confusing them. It's the blue. For some reason, I want the blue to be Serbs, but I don't know why, because that wouldn't fit anything. The Austrians are about the right color, to tell you the truth. They look German, but whatever. But I'd like... I don't necessarily want to advance, but I want to hurt this unit, and I want to keep my position here. And I've shifted my front over now. That doesn't actually hurt me. Upland isn't anything important in terms of terrain advantage. Although, bottomland is, right? No. But I'm in a river. Uh-oh, I gotta be careful about this. I am in a Sava river bend, which I believe only penalizes the attacker going across the arrow. Because that's saying, if I'm going into this hex, that's saying that I am crossing the river. And in the other case, hey, I'm just in normal defensive territory. Yeah, and I'm also launching a prepared attack here, which the Austrians can't do much about. They're just stuck with that one. This one I might be able to, I mean, I could force march units in. As usual, the counter move isn't going to do a whole hell of a lot. Again, no reserves to put in place, so I'm going to take the attack here. This one, I'm way too far away from everything. I can just hope that I survive this, because I'm in a bit of trouble if I don't, in terms of this is 5 victory points. This is one of the things, like the Serbs moving into here, if I ever get enough of a respite, like if the 5th Army starts shifting over to cover that, I might have enough time to grab some points there. And that's one of the things to worry about. And this is another one of the things. This is very easy to get. So that's a factor. Over here, there's basically nothing. The only thing of value is this, and that's a long walk. On the other hand, every interphase, you would get huge points for what's down there. So I guess it kind of makes up for the fact that there's nothing there. But yeah, you'd really have to shift the focus of the attacks to make that work. I don't know why. First of all, I know why there are core counters. I'm assuming those core come in. But what do I have here that's additional? I have this 1st and 11th. This is the 2nd that I had. I have the 3rd. I don't think there are pieces for this stuff. So there maybe is some intention to use these counters, maybe from Twilight in the East or something like that, in case the attack is more on Serbia alone. But unless the Conrad scenario handles, it won't be in here. Let's just make a mess. Unless the Conrad scenario handles something that requires pieces elsewhere. This is after the initial Austrian attack fails. All history, Conrad's case B. It looks like the same armies, and that's it. You know, that's all there are. Expansion possibilities. So with extra space available, I produced several counters for possible further use. Yeah, okay. And there's a 2-hex counter for use with offensive outrance. This is the dark blue-red First Army marker. Okay, that explains that. I wonder if the 11th Army, that's for 1915. So that covers a couple. This 3rd Army, though, I don't know. The fight here didn't get me anything. Down here, I actually got a retreat. I initially didn't think I had it, but I had forgotten the prepared attack modifier, the column shift, and ended up forcing it. I got a 1-circle retreat, and it actually was a 1-black circle retreat. I am moving forward. That was a hard decision because I'm coming out of better terrain, but if I'm going to get this, I got to keep pressing that unit. Of course, the Austrians go next and might be able to cause some problem. I don't know how much. They can't push me. They can't do anything too exciting. So they'd be relying on the combat table, and they don't really have much. I mean, you rely on the combat table either way. I find it kind of funny. I haven't seen any pushing around. I think the Austrians might want to launch an attack there, though. Kind of low odds attack. The hope is the attritional nature, with the Serbs having so many units that they're trying to recover. If we can beat things up, we did actually manage to cause an extra hit through a very lucky morale check on the divisional unit there. So that actually worked out pretty well for us. Even though our initial combat die roll ended up looking like the Austrians were going to take penalties from it. They got really good rolls, and the Serbs got really lousy roll. So, which you can see there, a 10. The Austrians had to make 2 different rolls, but okay. Austrian artillery made up for Serbian quality to some extent. Let's just check what we got here. Cav retire. I probably want to get this cav unit off the line. And that costs me 2 movement points. Run away, run away. He fought in the battle, and now he's leaving. I like the way the cav work. River step, nothing too exciting happening there, I think. This is the Serb turn, so I get to replace those Kumaji markers, and I have one here that I do not want there. It's hard to decide where I actually want it, though. Since I got one here, this is the only place I can put it that's of any value. I mean, I guess I can put it here or something, but I'm not really expecting that. And that'll put me over to the Austrian side in time for another break. Look at the Austrian movement chart. It's first the 6th Army, 16th Corps, moving into place to try to cut this thing off. It's a hard job, but if he can't get any support up for it, that thing could be not isolated, but cut out of supply, and then it's less likely to be able to attack here. And beyond that, maybe I have enough strength to knock it out. I doubt it. That's a pretty potent force there. Up here we have the 15th Corps, which I'm going to shift up here. They have thrown some forces over to join the 5th Army with its 13th Corps. The 13th Corps, let me make sure I've got the 11 GBs. See, I've got the 11 GB over here. I'm going to leave that. There are a lot of units over in here, but I'm at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 divisions. that's still allowable. I am going to want to shift this into there at some point. Some recovery going on, a couple of units healed there, and I've got an attack going here. And again, it's unlikely that this can be reinforced. This already has movement taken up. There's really just nothing in the way. And again, the prepared assaults are hitting. The Serbs are really too beaten up to be able to afford to throw reserves into play. You can see, hey, are the Austrians putting reserves? You know, you'd think they'd learn. They have what looks like a line. Yeah, but something like this could slide into the corner here. Something like this refused flank could slide in here. The Serbs don't have the forces to really push their way through. An attack on this could happen, but whatever. Fourth Corps has been removed, and I'm not good at reserves, obviously. And let's go to the counter moves. Largely just doing some recovery and preparing ourselves to launch an attack here. I can't do a prepared attack. I had enough movement points to do so, but again, it's counter move. Shifted the cav a little bit, but really holding that same line, and we'll deal with the attacks. We are going to try to stab this, though. If we can knock it out of there, we get 5 victory points, and then we try to figure out how to escape. Really budges for either combat. Samadra might have taken a hit. I believe it did. It's down to a -3 CE. That doesn't drive it out of the way yet. It's just slowly degrading, and I don't know where the hell I'm going to go next. I mean, I want to deny the victory points and the freedom of the Fifth Army, but yeah, and I failed to get a movement here, which is going to be a problem as well. I got another chance. I could take it during my turn. So I have an easy route out if I had taken it this turn. If I take it next turn, my route out is not trivial at all. I can lump my way back across the mountains, and I got another division I can put up to try to protect it, so I think it's still worth it, but whatever. Finishing phase, cav wasn't used, river step, Kamaji no. Victory points. So the Austrians get their 1 victory point for each turn, which is a pretty sweet collection, and we move into this interphase. This interphase means that we're gonna, I don't remember what this means. These guys, I think, start getting a chance to come in, and I've got more Montenegrins here that are coming close. They probably still have some recovery to do. No? Nope, they're good. So, you know, the preponderance of force down here may end up Serbian, as half the 6th Army and more goes away, and we're falling back. This round, both players got, Serbians only got 3, sorry. Austrians got 4 replacements, Serbians got 3. Montenegrins rolled a 6, that means they don't get any, and that's going to push these out. Basically, because I have no losses on the Montenegrins, I can build those assets up with replacement points, but I don't have any. And I've got 2 improved positions per player. I'm going to mark them with those big trenches. That'll help remind me that I have those available to build, just lying around. And I looked through my counters, and I've got no losses on the Austrians that I could find, which sounds about right. For the Serbs, I have 2 units that have losses. One of them is that Drina unit that I was able to combine that came back with step losses. Let's see. It's got basically 2 step losses on it. That was the Lozenska or whatever unit. I forgot to convert it, but during the counter movement, I could have converted it. You can do it at the end of any movement phase. So I just did that so that I have a place to put things. So let's do that one first. This is really simple. There doesn't seem to be any restriction. I would guess you need to be in supply, but I couldn't find that even. So we will just push 2 strength points in there and drop a replacement here. And then the other one is the same thing with this unit over here, which also has a couple of step losses on it. I'm not allowed to do more than one each, though, per interface, if I understand correctly. I'm going to look that up again because it seems a little weird that I can do it right on the front line like that. Although, maybe not that weird. And I could have done it with March units, etc. So yeah, I think it is right. It seems a little weird that I could do it without supply lines, but I do have supply lines, so I'm pretty sure that's going to be okay. And that will push me to game turn 7, and I'm going to load this sucker up unless I come back with some kind of, hey, wait, I was wrong about this, about the replacement points.